Hey guys, Brian from Brewing here. Today we're doing a video on how to do a yeast starter. This is an advanced brewing technique that will help improve your yeast health and your beers. If you haven't seen our channel before or don't know who we are, please like and subscribe to make sure this great content gets to you. We do tutorials, product reviews. Let's get to it. All right guys, real quick, before we get started talking about how to do a yeast starter, the equipment and the process, two quick things. First and foremost, make sure you stay tuned till the end of the video. We have a bonus tip at the end that'll help you level up your yeast starters. The second thing to keep in mind is that this is considered an advanced brewing technique. There is an element of risk when you're doing this because you could introduce infection into your beers. So you really need to make sure that you have your cleaning and your sanitization down before you take this to the next level. All right, let's talk about the equipment that we need for a yeast starter. First and foremost, you're obviously going to need some type of yeast. Generally, liquid yeast is what you want to use for fermentation. Dried yeast really doesn't lend itself unless it's an older yeast and you're trying to build it back up again. For today's demonstration, we are using a saucepan to boil our wort. You can also use an Erlenmeyer flask. These are borosilicate glass. You can put it directly on the stovetop, boil your wort in there, chill it down in there, and pitch your yeast in there. You'll also need some sort of an airlock to put on top of your fermentation device. A lot of times a foam stopper will work as well. If you don't have one of these Erlenmeyer flasks, you can use a half-gallon growler or a gallon growler. Funnel is always handy to make sure you can pour the liquid into your vessel of choice. You're obviously going to need some sort of a light dried extract. It's very easy to kind of weigh it out because it is dry. And the lighter color lends to a lighter flavor, so you're not impacting as much of the yeast starter flavor on your finished beer. You'll need a scale, of course, and yeast nutrient. This is very important for your yeast starter and making sure that they're growing as they should so that they really end up nice in your finished beer. Okay, so you have your equipment, you have your ingredients. Now the next question is how much starter do I need to make? There's a couple of factors that go into determining how big of a starter you need to make and how long you need to let it sit for, okay? First and foremost is your yeast health. How viable is your yeast? If it tends to be a little bit older and maybe not as viable, you'll need to do a little bit more of a starter to grow those yeast cells up. The other factor would be what the gravity of your beer is, the starting gravity of your beer is. If you've got a big beer that's a 1080, you're gonna need a lot more yeast, healthy yeast, to be able to ferment that out. That's gonna be a bigger starter. Now, for the most part, generally speaking, most starters from a gravity standpoint are between 1030 and 1040. It kind of varies between there. Some can be a little bit higher, but as a general rule, that's a good safe bet. As far as the volume goes, depends on how much yeast you're trying to grow up. Now, there are ways to calculate that, and that's not the purpose of the video today. There's a lot of great online calculators out there. Beersmith has one, Brewfather is a very popular one. We'll put some links down below to a couple of others. If you're taking the time to do a starter, it's important to do the calculator so that you can figure out how much starter wort do I need, what gravity do I need, how old is my yeast, so that you can get an optimum starter and really make sure that yeast is healthy and happy and have a fantastic finished product at the end. As mentioned before, be very cautious with your sanitizing practices. Make sure you treat everything on the cold side of your starter process as sanitary as possible. Now, as far as the water that we use, if you use chlorinated water, make sure you treat it just as you would with any other brew day water. We typically use RO water, so it's really not an issue for us in our starters or in our beer. Today's starter is a 1 liter starter at about 1040, so we're adding 3.8 ounces of dried malt extract. Remember that the starter gravity and the volume is dependent on your yeast health and the starting wort gravity. If you are taking the time to make a starter, make sure you calculate the appropriate size and strength. As just a general baseline, 1 gram of dried malt extract for 10 milliliters of wort is a good starting spot. Or if you're doing a 2 liter starter, it's 200 grams of dried malt extract. After weighing out your dried malt extract, and we use DME for this just because of the ease of measuring it out, mix it in thoroughly and then add a yeast nutrient of your choice. The nutrient will help to strengthen the yeast cell walls and ensures a nice, strong growth phase.
An optional step is to add some type of defoaming agent to your boil. I strongly encourage this to help prevent boilovers. This is a must for me since I'm easily distracted by shiny things and tend to walk away right before the big boil explosion. Once you have boiled your starter wort for 15 minutes, and that's really all it needs, the whole point of boiling for 15 minutes is simply to sanitize the dried malt extract and your yeast nutrient. Now that you're done, it's time to chill it down. Put the lid on your pot or a piece of foil on your flask to keep it sanitary, and run the pot or flask into the sink with an ice bath. You really want to try to keep the water moving around the pot or the vessel, as the goal is to move as much heat away from the vessel and speed up your cooling. Once your wort has cooled down to pitching temperatures, transfer it to your fermentation vessel, splashing it to add oxygen. At this step, if you have the ability to inject pure O2, do it now for a few seconds. This will help the yeast growth. This is optional, of course, because we've already added some yeast nutrient to help with this. Now it is time to pitch your yeast. You can pitch your yeast directly into a prepared starter wort, making sure everything that comes in contact from here on out has been sanitized. Now it is time to secure your fermentation vessel with either an airlock or a foam stopper, and then let it ferment. Because you have such a small volume of wort compared to the amount of yeast, starters should finish fairly quickly within 24 to 48 hours. Additionally, during this fermentation phase, it's important to periodically swirl or shake your starters. I recommend doing it every time you kind of walk by it. This helps to drive off any excess dissolved CO2, it keeps the yeast in suspension, and it can introduce more oxygen, which is important for the yeast in the starter. Once your starter has completed its fermentation, you have two options for pitching into your wort. Option 1 is to just dump the entire volume into your wort. This is fast and easy, but if you are doing a lighter flavored beer, your starter wort's flavor could be imparted into the finished beer. Option 2 is to chill down your starter for 12 hours to encourage the yeast to settle, then decant off as much of the lighter clear liquid at the top as you're comfortable with and pitch that into your wort.
All right, so thank you for watching all the way through the end of our video. As promised, here's our bonus tip. If you want to level up your yeast starter, got to have a stir plate. The benefits of a stir plate: keeps the yeast in suspension. It is constantly aerating your wort. The yeast gets so much more nutrient and oxygen and everything that they will double or even triple their quantity in the 24 to 48 hours. So this is the best way to optimize your yeast health. Got to do a stir plate. Hey guys, I hope our yeast tutorial brought you guys some value. If it did, please like and subscribe. That lets us know to keep this wonderful content coming. Check us out at benhambrewinghbe.com. We'll see you next time. Thanks, my friends.